Right. Well, after that, after Vietnam, came back in 1971 till 1975. I was stationed in St. Louis, Missouri, to the Army's Aviation Systems Command, which was the primary R&D and procurement arm of the Army for aviation. And my job was in the, and it's got a name as long as this. It's the Utility Tactical Transport Aircraft System Office. And there's probably only 4 or 5 officers in that, military officers. The rest of them were scientists and engineers that were responsible for seeing we were called the Technical Management Division. So therefore, all the technical stuff having to do with aircraft and their engines and flight systems was handled mostly by Department of the Army civilians, engineers. Very well, I have the deepest respect for them. They're very, very good at their jobs. And I, as a military guy, was kind of like the military counterpoint to any kind of discussions. It's that the civilians would come up with ideas for improvements to the aircraft, and I was kind of like a source to say, okay, what do you think of that? Well, one of the jobs that I had while there, the whole purpose of the Utility Tactical Transport Aircraft System Program Management Office was to come up with a replacement for the Huey. Now, the Huey had been in these systems since the 1950s, and here we are in the 1970s it's still using them. Well, the Army said, no, we really need to replace them. We needed to do the right thing because they're just the airframes are that's old. That's 1950s technology. We're in the 70s. We need to pick up the pace. So one of my assignments was to help create the document that the Army could go out to Bell, Boeing, Sikorsky, the primary helicopter manufacturers in America, and ask them to give us an idea of how they would meet the requirements for the Army, essentially. And it was, and Army loves acronyms, as I told you before, and it was my responsibility to help write the document for this aircraft called the PIDS, the Primary Item Development Specification, for the development program to develop a new aircraft for the Army. And so I kind of felt that was a very good use of my skills, because I think I'd talk about what we needed to replace the Huey, what were the good things about the Huey, which there are a lot, and the things that are not so good, which there are a few of the Huey. So I felt very, very honored to do that. And as part of the program, while I was still assigned to that duty assignment, we sent that PIDS out to the manufacturers. They came back with proposals, and so we had a request, what's called a request for proposal, and they came back and says, here's how we will meet that requirement that you said that you want. And of course, once these proposals came back from these manufacturers, they had to be looked at and determined it's good, bad, should we spend money on, etc. So I was assigned as the part of the crew that was working on analyzing these 3 proposals, one from Bell, one from Boeing, and one from Sikorsky, and of course a thing called a Source Selection Evaluation Board. It was just basically, we were a think tank of looking at what they said to meet our requirement. Was it good? Was it bad? Did it have any relevance or not? And my responsibility was, because of my combat background, was to do the survivability and vulnerability analysis of what they said they were going to make. So in a conjunction with the Ballistics Research Laboratory of the United States Army, which is out of Aberdeen, Maryland, I worked on and analyzed the radar cross-section, vulnerability design of their proposals to determine what was good and what was not so good about their designs, how survivable was the aircraft. And as a result of that, I'd like to, and by the way, the competing designs were down selected to Boeing and Sikorsky. Bell fell out of the competition at that time, and eventually went on to buy Sikorsky in what we now know as the Black Hawk. And I'd like to say, every Black Hawk flying today has a little of Jack Kempster in it because of what I did to determine the survivability of that airframe in combat.
Fantastic. So, oh boy.
And then,
yeah, go on.
And then after that, that was a nice 5-year run in St. Louis, Missouri, and I enjoyed it. And then I decided to, of course, for years we have our what we call, I don't know what the RAF calls it, but to be where your next duty station would like to be, and we call it our dream sheet.
Yeah, that's exactly what we called it. And you never got what you wanted.
Right.
And that's why we used to call it a dream sheet, because it was a total dream. You were never going where you wanted to go.
Well, every time I would put in a dream sheet, I would put down Hawaii. I thought, hey, Hawaii, I thought it'd be great. So
I'm never going to get there, so I might as well put it down for a joke, right?
Yeah, right. I just figured, well, what the heck? You might as well ask. Well, we call him a detailer, the guy who would give you your next assignment. He calls me up and he says, Jack, how you doing? I said, fine. He said, you're about ready to get reassigned, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I guess my time here is probably going to be about up. And he said, would you like to go to Hawaii? And I was like, really? Are you kidding me? And he said, no, really. So from 1975 to 1978, for the 3-year period, I spent in the beautiful island of Oahu, stationed at Schofield Barracks with the, again, 25th Infantry Division support for aircraft as part of the 45th Support Group, which we were, the way they organized it was to basically, the support group had an engineer battalion, it had aviation as support. Again, it was all the maintenance and supply for various parts of the Army and their mission. And it's very interesting because, of course, I was working, long hours, long days, I loved it. And there's no such thing as a 9-to-5 job in the military, as you all know. So I was spending a lot of time doing my job, whereas I think my family kind of enjoyed it because they had access to the wonderful beaches of Oahu, to having a full military post where they had all kinds of recreational capabilities, and I think the family probably, I shouldn't say it enjoyed it more than I did, but that's probably fair enough to say that they enjoyed it a lot more than I did because I was working and doing my job to maintain the fleet of aircraft, as well as, interestingly enough, a part of our support group was a boat company that was stationed down at Ford Island, right outside of Honolulu, which of course Ford Island was where the battleships were during the attack on Pearl Harbor, and the boat company was part of our group. So I had a chance to be a kind of a transportation corps officer again, not just with aviation, but with a boat company, and the commander of the boat company, where I were real good friends, and we would go down and visit the Ford Island facility on more than one occasion, and we would. The boat company commander, he said, well, we got to have a training. So training, why don't you jump on board one of our lighters? They were lighter aircraft that have the, if you recall, in Normandy when they run up to the shore and the front flops open and the troops run out.
Yeah.
Okay.
The landing craft.
Yeah, a landing craft. that's what they were. There was a company of those, and we would go out and cruise around Honolulu Harbor for an afternoon soiree, and so I got a chance to be, for my career, to be a transportation guy again, right? Not just an aviator. So in that way, that was kind of a fun for me, because I saw another side of the Army that I had no knowledge of until that assignment.
I mean, if you think about it like that, and you look at the time scale, 1970, you're still flying combat missions, but you're in a relatively new almost brand new aircraft, but relatively new aircraft, the Cobra, in Vietnam. By 71, you're working on the Black Hawk for 4 years, bits and pieces to do with that, and doing all your evaluations. By the mid to late 70s, you're swanning around the harbour in a boat in Honolulu.
Yeah, right.
There aren't too many people that can stay working for the same corporation, that so to speak, and I say that very tongue-in-cheek, it's because it's not working for a corporation, but I think you get my meaning, don't you? That shorter time span. What were you doing in 1970? I was getting shot at over Cambodia. And what were you doing by 75, 76? I was swanning around the harbour in a boat in Hawaii. Oh, love it. Well, you get back. Yeah, go on. Sorry. From that time, it was basically in a maintenance posture, maintaining the fleet of aircraft that were in Hawaii, serving the 25th Infantry Division and other units that were stationed as part of the military forces in Hawaii in the Pacific Fleet. And then in 78 to 83, I was back in St. Louis at that time. By that time they changed the name from the Aviation Systems Command to Aviation Research and Development Command, and I was assigned to a program office for the CH-47 modernization program, where we were taking the fleet of CH-47s, which had been around since about the time of the Huey from the 50s, to modernize it to be an aircraft for the future. And the program manager was a Colonel James Hessen, and Colonel Hessen said, "Okay, now we know what we want to do, and we know we got this design that we're going to keep the Chinook, but we're going to need to modernize it." And he said, "But we got to justify how we're going to do it." And I said, so he signed myself from the technical side and the program management side of it, to along with the guy who was essentially focused on the maintenance of the maintenance posture of the fleet of CH-47s. And he said, "Okay, you guys come up with the correct answer." I'm going like, "Oh, okay, boss." So I said, and we had many sessions. We had a conference room that had all 4 walls of the conference room had chalkboards on it, and we had written down everything that we could possibly know about what we needed to have for our fleet of Chinooks for the future. And as we were and Dean Hammer was Dean. Dean was a wonderful guy. Dean and I, we would sit our chairs. We put our chairs in the middle of the room, back to back, and he would look at one set of boards, and I would look at the other side of the boards, and we pondered for literally hours and days, and we would go back to the Colonel Hessen and say, "Sir, we can't come up with it." He said, "Out of my office and come back when you have an answer." "Oh, yes, sir." So we left the office, and we did that twice. So the third, we said, we're kind of running on going to run out here if we don't get ourselves an answer for the boss. And so we said, we were sitting there one day. It was a Saturday morning,
And we'd been at it all through the week, and Friday night until 10, 11 o'clock at night. Came back early Saturday morning, and we're sitting there looking at our boards and saying, what have we missed? There's got to be something in there. And then, true story, simultaneously, we were both kind of looking at as we were swiveling our heads back and forth, we both stopped at the same board and we saw the answer. The answer was, if we don't do something to modernize the fleet, we won't have a fleet, because the attrition through aircraft accidents, through maintenance problems, through airframes reaching their end of life, we will not have a CH-47 fleet if we don't do something. And so we did a regression analysis on the information that we had to determine, oh, that's what we need to do. And we found that that the program was going to take the current fleet of airframes that had been retired to the boneyard out in Arizona, along with the current fleet of aircraft that were flying in the active Army and the reserves and the Guard, and that sum total fleet, along with new airframes being built, was going to solve the problem of the future. And we went to him and he said, we briefed him on here's the way the program was going to go, blah, blah. And he said, after we got through with our briefing, he said, see, I told you you guys could figure it out. And that's when we came up with the CH-47D model, because there were A's, B's, and C's that were all converted through a series of over several years to D models. And today we have the CH-47, I think it's up to the M model or something like that, that the special operators use for their long leg operations, and air-to-air refueling with a big probe sticking out of the nose. And all of that came as a result of us deciding that, hey, we need to modernize this fleet, and here's how we do it.
Okay. I think that is a classic example of what a military boss would call, one of my former bosses used to say, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions.
Yeah, right. So from then on, let's see, it was from 75 to 83, and then 83, I went to the Pentagon for another 3-year blast, and I started out in the office of the Deputy Chief of Staff for Logistics for Aircraft Maintenance, which was the logistics arm of the Army Aviation at the headquarters department in the Army level in the Pentagon, which was interesting because the individual that I worked for was Mr. Cribbins, who was considered to be one of the, I'll use the term, godfathers of Army aviation. That he had started out his career in the 40s as a steeplechase jockey or something like that, and had gradually become part of the old horse cavalry and converted into modern army. The modern army, aside from horse cavalry, into the air cavalry, which he embraced fully, and he taught us, or he allowed us to be shepherds of the Army aviation fleet, and it was an honor, high honor to work for Mr. Cribbins. And even to this day, the Army Aviation Association of America holds an annual Joseph Cribbins Forum at Corpus Christi, Texas, which is the location of the depot for Army Aviation, to this day, in honor of him. Mm-hmm. So I've had some pretty good mentors over the years, and it's a matter of okay, what did he teach me? He taught me perseverance, courtesy, and never give up and never give in, because if you're satisfied that that's the way we need to go, hang with that point. Somebody may disagree with you and shut you down, but don't give up your principles.
If you've got a plan and you think it's going to work and you believe in it, stick to it.
Well, in aviation, we have a saying: plan your flight and fly your plan. And at that time, I was a lieutenant colonel in that office, and then that was the time during that 3-year period was when I was promoted to full colonel, and that was the rank that I retired with, and so I must say that the time in that office, and then following on to by the last year of the Pentagon was with the R&D side of the business, to where I was actually responsible for providing the justification to both military leadership as well as Congress for the basic research monies that the Army was going to have for doing basic research on various subjects, and that would have military worth. So, and that was very interesting, because I felt that I was doing something that maybe I will never see the results of it, because this is just basic research, not advanced research, not developmental work, but this is the basic research that the Army needs to do for the future weapon systems, whether they be aviation, ground systems, or water systems, whatever it was. That was my responsibility, and I learned a lot from that job too.
So after your time at the Pentagon, Jack, what comes next?
Well, I was offered a command of the U.S. Army's Material Technology Laboratory in Watertown, Massachusetts, at the old Watertown Arsenal. It's been converted into a materials laboratory for the hard materials of the Army, such as armor and other hard materials for military use. And I was the commander of that installation, and we did many different types of work primarily on armor protection for the tank forces. That Material Technology Laboratory was where we developed titanium diboride armor for tanks, which is the current, as I understand it, is the current type of armor used by modern tanks in the Army. And also at that, when within days after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, they were assigned a special mission by the Secret Service. It was called the Executive Protection Program. And literally monthly, while I was there for the 2+ years, while I was there, the Secret Service would come up, use our indoor ranges. We had ranges we got up to fairly large caliber weapons, and indoors, and they would ask us to set up a certain type of stands to put their product on, and they would come in with their briefcases, and they would go in behind locked doors, and we could hear the rounds going off, and then after 2 or 3 hours, it would come out of the locked chamber of the locked range, and had them back on off to Washington, and they had been doing that for over 20 years when I arrived at the lab, and it was one of those programs that, as we say, it was in a black box until such time as it was made public that we had been working on materials for the president, for protecting the president, and the armored vehicle that the United States president travels in, called the Beast, which is a modified Cadillac chassis, essentially has all of those materials that we had developed, and they had tested at our facility, were incorporated into those vehicles.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's more an armored vehicle with a Cadillac body shell on it, really, isn't it? there's just about everything in there that you could possibly need to withstand a nuclear attack. I think.
yeah, it's a fleet of automobiles.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're not breaching the Official Secrets Act here. I think
No.
most people know that. Now, Fort Bliss, Texas, summer '85. You get to inspect. Go on, take it from here.
Okay. I was invited to go down to the Fort Worth area, to a military base down there, to take a look at an aircraft, and because the materials in this aircraft would be interesting to us in the United States to understand what it was made of. And as it turned out, when I got down there, was driven to the field, to a hangar, and I noticed that there was a lot of security guards surrounding this particular hangar, and I thought, that's interesting. And so they ushered me inside, and behind black plastic hangers, curtains, they opened them up, and there was a Hind, a Mi-24, I believe is the designation by the forces, foreign forces. And it was a Hind helicopter that they allowed me to crawl all over, look at, determine the materials in the airframe, in the engines, the cockpit configurations, free access to that particular aircraft, and which is something that very few Westerners have had a chance to see. And I must say, I won't say anything more other than we learned a lot from my visit.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yes,
Some
right.
things are best kept to yourself, even
Right.
now.
I had at the time I had a top secret special compartmented information clearance, which allowed me to do that. Otherwise, I would not. They would have said, "Oh yes, it's there," but we'll take a look at it and tell you about it. So they allowed me the personal visit and a personal look, see, and the touch and feel of a Soviet helicopter, which is the Hind Mi-24 is their version of what we call the Apache attack helicopter. Very modernistic, a beast, to use a word, of a helicopter built for battle. To be honest with you, I was very impressed of the technology that they had. I was also impressed with the technology that wasn't there. So suffice it to say, it was a very strong learning experience for me and for the United States Army.
Would you have liked to have flown it if you could?
Of course.
That was really a throwaway question, I suppose. So after that, we're getting on to your very last posting, aren't we?
Yes.
For the last 2 years. So far away, Fort Eustis.
Yes. I was the command. That was one command in Watertown, and they offered me another command at the Aviation Technology Directorate, Army Aviation Technology Directorate, or AATD, and it was essentially the Army's aviation skunk works, if you will. If people are familiar with the word skunk works from the old days of Lockheed, and we provided.
You'll have to explain that one to me.
Yeah, okay.
I've heard of skunk works,
Yeah.
but I don't know what it means. So
Well, our job was to at the Applied Technology Directorate. We were directed to take from the scientists and engineers of the community, as well as from both private sector as well as military civilians, the materials, systems, and that applied to the current fleet, and perhaps even the next fleet
of Army aircraft, primarily helicopters, to get it out of the engineer's drawing board and get it onto the aircraft, get it tested, get it certified, and then see which fleet, mostly the special operations fleet, to provide them with the most advanced systems available to do their job.
Which wasn't a million miles away from what you'd been doing a few years earlier when you'd been, because when you were evaluating before to see how things would potentially pan out in the field. You know, you were making your evaluation to say, you've designed this, if you fit this, I can see some problems with this from a pilot's perspective. So it's almost a repeat of your earlier evaluation. There's a mention here that you've flown the OH-6 KUs on the Elgin Air Force Base gunnery ranges with the firing the side-mounted GO-8, the minigun.
Yes, at Eglin Air Force Base, which is the Air Force's special operations base for their helicopters, and also the Army used it in cooperation with the Air Force. And they offered me the opportunity. Now, I was of the older era of the light observation helicopter, the Raven, as we talked about in my first Vietnam tour, and was my first helicopter I was qualified in. But the modern era was the OH-6 Cayuse, and they had a minigun, a GO-8 rotating barrel, 7.62 side mounted on the aircraft, which has a pretty good pack when you fire it, because it fires several hundred rounds per minute. So therefore, there's a bit of a thrust and kickback, if you will, from the firing of that weapon. And being mounted on the side, there was some concern: was the aircraft going to be controllable when the weapons were fired? And so I had the opportunity to go down to Eglin and fly with a group of people that really know how to fly and do it every day for the Army. And they were allowed me to get in the cockpit and go out and fire on the range. Well, being an old colonel, and most of these were fairly, I'll use the term, fairly young kids that were flying. They were and very, very skilled, by the way, excellent pilots and aviators. But not having the Cayuse was foreign to me as far as the aircraft, but also the fact that we were going to be out there firing a weapons system that might cause the aircraft to do some unusual attitude adjustments. That I was with a very experienced IP, probably one of the older IP instructor pilots in the unit. And this special operations unit that I was working with said, okay, we're going to go out and fly and we're going to fire the weapons. So we went out, flew out to the ranges, the aerial range, the gunnery range, and we rolled in. He said, okay, there's you see the target? Yep, target. He said, all right, you have the aircraft, go ahead and fire the weapons. So I made a pass, firing the weapons, and I kind of splattered all around. Luckily, the range was very wide, and I kind of splattered around because of the kick, the sideward kick to the aircraft. And I said, so as we pulled off and peeled around and came around the second time, I said, that wasn't very good, was it? He said, well, let's try it again. So second time rolled in, I was then realizing what the aircraft was going to do when I fired the system. Did quite a bit better on the second round and aced the target. And so we pulled off and we pretty much fired up all of our ammunition on those two runs. So we went back to the base where we were operating out of. And as we were landing and hovering on in, he said, he turned to me and he said, you know, for a colonel, you're a pretty good pilot. I said, thanks, Pappy. I don't know his name. All I know is it was Pappy. Because that's the way they operated with the particular in the special operations. You know, you don't use last names, you use first names or call signs.
and we were, as part of their normal training, we may have been in flight suits. However, we were not allowed to carry any identification, any name badges, or even the service on our flight suits. Took our wallets away, took our pictures of our families away, and said, "That's the way we operate."
Fair enough. And that is such a, I mean, it's a great compliment coming from him, because to put this into perspective, 87, 88, 89, you're nearly 50 years old at this point.
Yes.
So, you know, you've been kicking around the US military in one way or another since the late 1950s, when you first got involved with ROTC. And it's now the late 1980s, and you're with the Special Forces, and you're flying as a colonel. We would call that a jolly in the RAF. It's not really a jolly, because a jolly is a trip that's just buck-shee. You know, we're going on a jolly with some low-level VIP to Italy, and we're going to stay there for 3 days. That was a proper jolly, but it is a kind of a jolly because, well, you're back in the seat of a helicopter, one that you hadn't been familiar with, but it doesn't, you know, you weren't in any danger. No one was shooting the canopies out, were they?
No, nobody was shooting at us. All I can say is that perhaps my 3,000 hours of flight time prior to that gave me some small modicum of qualification to be doing what I was doing. But I tell you what, it was a jolly. It was a lot of fun. It was a new experience for me. In that particular, it was a new aircraft, a new system, and it was, again, to me personally, it was new. So that was a jolly good ride.
And did retirement come as, was it your decision? Was it their decision? Was it a bit of both? Was it time served? I mean, how did it happen?
I probably could have stayed for another 3 years. However, I made the decision at the time. I really wanted more time with family, because I had been, as is wont with the military, you're traveling either constantly to various locations around the world, or being separated for a year or more at a time from the family. I just really felt that it was time for me to say, you know, thank you very much. I've enjoyed the ride, but I think it's time to get off.
And the other thing to get into perspective, to use that phrase again, is that Ross was only sort of 8 years old at this point.
Yes.
So it's a wonderful opportunity to spend, you know, time with him.
Yes.
So did you take much of a holiday that year? Did you take some time off?
No. I still worked long hours because, again, as I've told many people that I've met in the military, if it's fun, keep doing it. When it stops being fun, stop doing it. Whatever it is, whether it's something in your private life or something in your career, if it stops being fun, stop doing it. And for me, that was my decision point, that I just said, I have other things I want to do with my life. And at that time, I just said, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I bowed out.
And did you go straight into work then? I mean, that's really where I was. That's really where I was getting at with that. Did you take like a 4-week holiday after you retired and say, I've earned this, or did you already have a job lined up?
Actually, I was contacted by an old friend of mine who I had worked with in St. Louis at the Aviation Systems Command, and he said, Jack, I have a job for you, and I'd like to see you. Well, when Dick Lewis says he has something for me to do, I dropped what I was doing, jumped on an airplane, and flew to see him. And he was the president of the ITT Night Vision in Roanoke, Virginia, and he explained to me what he wanted me to do, and I said, well,
I can be here whenever you need me. And he said, well, this was like, I think, a Friday afternoon. He said, well, I know you probably want to take the weekend, but can you be here first part of next week? So from Virginia, Northern Virginia, to Central Virginia, we moved over I chose to move over the weekend. And from then on, I worked over 11 years at ITT Night Vision, providing night vision goggles to international customers. That was also a very interesting job to do, because my understanding of night vision, because I had used night vision goggles in the helicopter, and my total knowledge of the technical aspect was, yes, I turn them on and they work. So the intricacies of the production and the incredible technology involved with making night vision goggles was new to me, and I felt that hey, this is another chapter. This is going to be exciting. I'm going to learn something, and I certainly did. I learned because I was the vice president for quality assurance for the company, and therefore I had to understand and know every single process for the manufacturing of night vision goggles. And to me, that was exciting. That was fun. That was so I got back in my fun zone for over 11 years with the company.
Yeah, and it was just as an aside, that was quite an interesting time with night vision, because we've gone from they had night vision. The Germans had it at the end of World War II, the Vampire system on one of their small arms, and so it's not new as an idea, but the technology has been running, and I know now from a hunting perspective, we've gone from looking at things through green goggles a few years ago, which I should imagine was that era.
Yes.
I've actually got some military goggles downstairs, about 30 years old, which are like that. And now, of course, we've moved on again, and we're into heat seeking and that sort of thing. Well, not heat seek, but yeah, it is heat seeking. Yeah. But
right.
Yeah.
We refer basically the night vision goggles that I worked with were photon amplifiers. In other words, if there was a photon, being a light particle, is amplified through a very sophisticated electronics sensing and displayed to the eye. Well, nowadays they have combined that with the infrared for what they call sensor fusion, and so therefore you get the best of an image intensifier, which is basically has to count on, there's got to be some light somewhere for you to see that, to complete obscure darkness with the infrared sensors that can look through clouds and can see an object, and you can identify, is it a vehicle, is it a human, what is it? And you see it, you probably see on TV where they use the infrared cameras for seeking out a lost hiker in the woods, because the lost hiker would be a warm body against a cool background, and they can find them fairly quickly compared to having 20, 30, 40, or 100 people walking through woods looking for somebody because they don't really know where they are.
Yeah, and the thing is, to bring things bang right up to date, that technology, of course, is now going onto drones, because drone warfare is, well, it's old news to say it's the next level.
Yes.
It's the next stage. But yeah, you retired from there in 2000, and something completely different here. I know you're very proud of your voluntary work. Now, there's an irony here. Co-chair and chair of Choppertown. I mean, come on, was somebody having a laugh here?
Well, yeah.
With 27 years in the military, and coach. What's Choppertown?
Well,
Son and Son, Lakeland, Florida.
In Lakeland, Florida.
What's this all about?
The second largest aviation expo and air show is held here in Lakeland, Florida. The largest one, of course, is Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is a huge expo of aviation technologies and both military and civilian technologies. And the second largest is here in Lakeland. And it's primarily aimed at the civilian sport aviation market and group of people that do that sort of thing, or home built, people who build their own aircraft, as you say, in their basement, and then they take it out and put it together and fly it. But in the helicopter business, we have, because we are an aircraft, and we don't play well with others. Our area where we were relegated to on the airfield was way away from the rest of the fixed wing community because of our rotor wash and things that might damage an aircraft if we hovered by them. So we had an area where we could, visiting helicopters, could land and take off and operate separate from the fixed wing community, but at the same time operate at the same time as the fixed wing community, because we would be physically separated from them. And I did that been doing that for over 20 years. And my love of aviation and of helicopters, it gets nourished every year because I have the opportunity to meet and talk with people who are private owners or corporate owners of helicopters that come in and land, and we do, as we say in the aviation business, we do a lot of hangar flying. Sitting in the hangar and talk about the things that we've done and the characteristics, the flight characteristics of aircraft that in fact, some of the helicopters they talk about, I've never even seen or heard. To me, it was a learning experience, but it was to use your expression, it was a jolly. And it has been a jolly for me for over 20 years to do this and it's all volunteer. They don't pay me a dime for it. And it's long hours, and it's at times it's a bit tiring, but it's at the other side of the coin, it's invigorating to my soul to be so connected to the rotary wing community and the rotary wing world when I get a chance to do that every year. And it's only 1 week out of the year, but we do a lot of pre-planning and post activity, post briefings as to how did it go, what can we do better, how can we make it safe. And as a little story here that I'd like to pass on, that as you know, as you know, here in America, there's the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and as most civilian pilots would tell you, I don't ever want to talk to the FAA. Because the expression, the joke that goes around, and even the guys in the FAA understand this joke, is that we're not happy until you're not happy, because they're the regulators of the aviation community. So recently we had to move our landing area because of other things, of buildings that were being built. So we moved our landing area around, and we were queried rather heavily by the FAA as to what kind of an operation this is going to be, where is it going to be, and the individual called me on the phone, and I gave him every question he asked. I gave him an answer, told him what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, where we were going to do it, and and he said, well, look, when I come to the Sun Fund, can I stop by and take a look at the area that you're going to be? Oh, he said, of course, stop by. So he stopped by, and we gave him a full tour of our area, what we were doing from the safety. The biggest primary thing is aviation safety. Let's not do anything. Let's not do anything stupid. Let's be a safe operation, because we are operating, essentially mixing both fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft at this one airport, and are we doing it safely? And we explained, we showed him where we were, showed him other pieces of land that were adjacent to where we were. If we had overflow because we had too many aircraft for a parking safety. And after the operation, he said, boy, you guys really know what you're doing. And from then on, we had a friend in the FAA, and
I've talked to many other people since that meeting, and this has been probably within the last 5 years, and they say, you don't have trouble with the FAA? And I said, no. They asked the questions, I gave them answers, and they were apparently happy with my answers. So, they're our friends. and his parting comment to me last year when I saw him, he said, I really wish the rest of the guys would do as good a professional job as you guys do. So to me, hell of a compliment.
It doesn't get
from the
any
FAA.
better than that, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're still involved with that now at 85.
Yes, I passed off the leadership role to another individual who is a retired American Airlines captain.
You can forgive him for that. You can forgive him for that.
Yeah, he's well, not only is he a many thousands of hours of fixed wing commercial flight for American Airlines, he also owns his own helicopter. So I think they were paying him a pretty good salary at American Airlines to where he could own his own helicopter, and he is also has the mantle of safety is uppermost in our mind with whatever we do. So I'm pleased that he's doing what he's doing. He's allowed me to still come over and bother him on an annual basis when they come back. So I feel that's what in a way that's what keeps me young.
And VIP tickets for life, I hope. I hope after all that service for them. At this point, I'm going to mention your awards, and I do need to glance down at my piece of paper for all this. So we've got Master Army Aviator Badge, Army Staff Identification Badge, Distinguished Member of the Regiment of the Army Transportation Corps, the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star with 1 oak leaf cluster, the Meritorious Service Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters, Air Medal 17 oak leaf clusters, Joint Service Commendation Medal, Army Commendation Medal with 1 oak leaf cluster. Which of these means the most to you? Which are you most proud of, and why? And is there anything that you wish you had received that you didn't? And is there anything that you didn't receive and you're quite glad that you didn't?
Well, it may sound a bit strange, but the thing that I am most proud of is the 17 oak leaf clusters to my Air Medal badge, which means I was awarded an initial one and then 17 oak leaf clusters, only earnable as a combat aviator, meaning each one of those represents over 25 hours of combat flying in a hostile environment, and as we say, in living to tell about it. So that I am most proud of as an emblem of a recognition by the Army. To say, what did I really wish I would have, or glad I didn't get? Well, I think that of all the flying that I did, and many experiences that I all came back from and walked away from, would be a Distinguished Flying Cross, which I did not earn. And although at that time, when I and my wingman and other people were out in harm's way, it was a matter of you did that every day, and not every day was a Distinguished Flying Cross moment, but it was a matter of we stuck our neck out, and sometimes we got bruised a little bit by doing that, because we were convinced that this was the proper thing to do, and the proper thing that our country wanted us to do. And in retrospect, the one thing that I'm glad that I
did not get awarded was a Purple Heart. In all that flying, and all of that time, no matter where I was, whether I was in the air or having to put one down because of a mechanical problem or because of enemy action, walked away without a scratch on every single landing. And as we say in the aviation business, any landing you can walk away from is a good landing. So therefore, I'm glad that I did not have the unfortunate circumstance of receiving a Purple Heart. Although I must say those who have received it have given, and sometimes, the last full measure. And that's something that I experienced watching my comrades. It is it is a little bit difficult to talk about, but it is something that I can remember. I can remember very well and very vividly that those were my comrades in arms. And you never forget. Well, an example of one of the times which counted towards my earning an air medal was we were providing support for a small infantry unit that had been attached to our unit that was out on a reconnaissance mission, and as is wont for those who are walking through the jungle and looking for trouble, they found trouble and were in essence surrounded. And as a gunship flying the heavy hog, and I and my wingman, we were providing air support, close air support as best we could, and we were called upon in that mission to provide support and provide cover to try to suppress the enemy or chase them away as best we could, so we could get a helicopter in there to rescue them and bring them out. And it was made a run that he had identified where he was, and we knew where the bad guys were, so we were making a run on the bad guys. And on my first run, I, of course, again, don't want to incur any casualties with our own people as collateral damage or anything like that, but I wanted to make sure that we were doing proper, hitting the proper place to try to disperse this enemy force. And after we made the run, I said, we called down to them. I said, okay, how'd that go? And he said, well, bring it in closer. And I'm thinking, like, really? Okay. So our second run was, this was mostly with rockets. And so on our second run, we moved in a little closer to where we knew that he was with his small unit. And then as we were firing the rockets, I turned and said, okay, how's that? And he said, that's pretty good, but bring it in a little closer. I'm like, all right. On the third run, I pickled off a couple of rockets, and as they exploded, I knew they were, gee whiz, that's awful close to where he is. And about that time, I heard, oh, I'm hit. I was mortified. I was absolutely mortified that he would be wounded by one of my rockets trying to help him. So, and that was the last run we made, because in fact it had dispersed the enemy, and we were able to get a rescue helicopter in, get them, and go on back to base. All the way back, I was thinking, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? Damn it. Pardon the, but that's the way I felt. So we landed, and where the rescue bird landed and where I was loggered into were fairly close. So immediately I saw them, and they were exiting the aircraft. I immediately exited the aircraft and ran over towards him. And I said, "Are you all right? What? How you?" He said, He said, "Oh, it was just a little piece of shrapnel." He said, "It's just a little scratch. No problem, no problem." And I said, "Oh, gee." He said, and he turned to me and he said, "Now that's what I call close air support." So I was elated that he was not seriously hurt, but it was a matter of it preyed on my conscience that I, for whatever reason, might have caused harm to one of my own soldiers. And Lieutenant Alto, I will never forget his name. He was a soldier once and young.
And of course, the story has a nice ending.
Yes.
But obviously, I appreciate how, as best as I can appreciate how you must have felt at the time. But to try and put a perspective on it from somebody that wasn't there, how close must the enemy have had to have been for him to call you in 2 times more?
Probably.
What was going on down there?
Yeah, probably less than 50 meters. Probably, and because the radius of the rockets, the 2.75-inch folding fin area rocket, is about like an 81 millimeter mortar. It has a pattern of destruction. However, it is limited in its scope. So yes, we had to put it within approximately 50 meters of where he was in order to suppress them and get them out of there.
Yeah. Well done.
And considering I was firing from
Words
over,
fail me.
considering I was firing from over, like between 500 and 1,000 feet, that's, I would say, somebody was sitting on my shoulder.
It's a wonderful story. You talk about somebody sitting on your shoulder. Now, in 27 years, you've talked about so many people. I met this guy here, and I met this guy here, and this person was an influence on me, and IPs that you've talked about, different people that going all the way through this. Who stands out in all that time? Are there any people that stand out to you and you look back and you think, oh yeah, that particular individual was very, very special, very inspiring to me. Who is it for you?
Well,
do you
for
have
me,
anyone?
There are 2 people that stand out in my mind. One is Brigadier General Samuel Cockerham, and at the time he was a colonel, and his guidance to me was very important, because he took the time, if you will, to provide insight into his philosophy and what I could do to improve my career, and I took that to heart. And the other individual who I absolutely think the world of, and was Major General Story C. Stevens, who at the time was the commander of the Aviation Systems Command, who who saw something in me that he thought was good, and it allowed me to not only work in the program management office for the UTTAS, but also to make sure that I was available and became his, if you will, his. I'll use the word sidekick, and that's not exactly what I mean by that, but It was a matter of, I was what's referred to in the Army as the Secretary of the General Staff. And he was a general officer and he had a staff, but he has an individual who runs his staff, and he picked me to do that. And I'm at the time, and I probably still am to this day, not exactly, I didn't really like to write things. I'm writing letters or writing whatever. But that was primarily the kind of a job that I had, was to make the administrative corrections, if you will, to a letter that he was going to sign. And I took that very seriously because, once I got through the process, it was going to go on his desk. And of course, I did not want to disappoint him. And so therefore, again, he mentored me in the fact that, yes, you can do it. And I did it. And I was amazed at how much I learned about being a writer and being able to write and being able to articulate ideas that perhaps someone who is an engineer, because we have a lot of scientists and engineers in the Aviation Systems Command, and engineers are wonderful people, but they're not very good writers. And as much as
they're very good engineers, aren't they? That's why they're engineers. They're very good engineers.
That's why they're engineers and not writers. But and I would sometimes chuckle when I would read what they had put down. I thought, I don't really think that's what they wanted to say. So I would give them suggestions. Never jumped on them at all. I just said, well, I think it would be better off if you said it this way. And they said, oh, okay. And I learned that there's a right way and a not so right way of writing correspondence for a general officer.
Anything else that you'd like to end with? A message to friends, family, the world, your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren?
Yes. One thing, if I may. All of my mentoring that I have received and I've also then imparted on others, basically, do what's right. It may not always be the most popular thing. It may not be what the individual that you are counseling or mentoring wants to hear, but do the right thing. Plain and simple. It's if you make that your living will to those who would listen to you, they will find that doing what's right is not that hard, and it pays off in the long run. Whether it's in business, in private life, interpersonal relationships. It's to me, I try to be as simple as I can possibly make my life, and to me that has stood me in good stead.
Legacy. How do you want to, when people look back and they think about Jack Kempster when you're not around anymore, what would you like people to think?
Well, my whole life, virtually since I was a young kid, service above self. It's pretty simple. It's very difficult to do, but service to others, service to your country, service to your family. To me, that's the most important thing that a human can do, is to be available for service to others. So, how can I help? Sometimes the help is not wanted, but I would at least have the opportunity to say, okay, I'll help you however I can. What would you like me to do? And just, even though it may not be the way you would do it because that's the right thing to do.
Well, I'm very much hoping that, you know, even if you need the aid of a wheelchair or something like that, in 10 years' time, they're wheeling you out onto the dispersal to watch the helicopters taking off. And I'd just like to say how incredibly honoured it's been. And I'm so... just thank you for your time. It's taken a lot longer to film this than I thought it would, and I don't care. I just don't care because I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, I want to thank you. I want to thank you very, very much for the honor of being able to do this. I don't think I've...
Oh, the honor was all mine. Believe you me.
I don't think I've established a one-man legacy, because there's been so many other people that have mentored me throughout my life that I looked up to, and I listened, tried to digest what they were doing. You know, and quite often, you know, when I was about to do something stupid, they would remind me, "You're about to do something stupid," and I appreciated that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's quite a few family members that might disagree with the very humble way that you view yourself, and I'm not a family member, but I would probably disagree too, to be quite honest. I think you're a very, very humble man. So on that note, I'll end this here. Jack Kempster, thank you very, very much.
You are most welcome.